Now, in a great article last month, Annette Scott in Farmers Weekly reported that Irrigation New Zealand has welcomed the government's call to seek out infrastructure projects ready to kick into gear once the construction industry resumes business. Economic Development Minister Phil Twyford and Infrastructure Minister Shane Jones says the government has tasked a group of industry leaders to seek out infrastructure projects ready to start as soon as possible. And I want to know how many of them are shovel ready in the water game. Of course, we've got the budget this Thursday, and I want to see where the spinning coin is going to land in these table of promises. So joined on Sarah's Country now, we have CEO of Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal, to talk through this wish list. Good evening, Liz. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Really looking forward to getting stuck into a Sarah's Country budget special this Thursday and unpacking what is and not in this year's major helicopter budget. Optimistically cautious, I could imagine that you are, having been involved in these conversations with government saying, we want to support you. How much has been pre-promised and how much funds towards water storage do you believe could be in this budget?
Well, like you say, the government has put together an infrastructure reference group to look at projects that can be shovel ready, and so get construction underway quickly as a means of kickstarting the economy in the post-COVID-19 world that we'll find ourselves in very soon. However, those are projects that are shovel ready, so that means that consenting's all happened, everything's ready to go, they just need to start construction. A lot of water infrastructure and water storage projects are not at the shovel ready stage yet. So what we are hoping for is for there to be a longer term water infrastructure strategy that incorporates 3 waters and a 4th water in relation to irrigation and rural water supplies. And so that's a bigger strategy as part of a larger infrastructure or water-related funding package that's outside of those shovel-ready projects, which we know there's certain money already earmarked to.
It's actually really frustrating when they shut down the Crown irrigation investments as this government came in, and then all of a sudden 3 years later expect those types of projects to be shovel-ready.
Well, some of them have been funded in a different way through the Provincial Growth Fund. Having said that, it's an entirely different sort of funding mechanism, and there are very specific criteria in relation to water and irrigation projects under the Provincial Growth Fund, and a lot of those projects that have got funding through them, it's in the form of loans. That the issue as well with the shovel-ready projects is I would imagine that there's going to be a lot more applications put through for consideration on that list than there will be funding available under that funding pool, and particularly for district councils that have aged water infrastructure that needs replacement. If it's going to be done properly and in a effective way so that all waters are considered together, that's where we think that it needs to be looked at in the round, and there needs to be a greater water strategy around it.
I mean, we all know that talking about water delays getting on with water as well, and it must be extremely frustrating. But I think that we've had a bit of a change of tune around the consensus, especially with Minister Shane Jones, in terms of multiple different small water storage infrastructure versus large. Where is that conversation sort of been in the last 12 months of change?
Yes. So the Provincial Growth Fund criteria specify that must be for smaller scale irrigation, and that can be from one farm to many farms, but there's certainly been a movement away from what's called mega irrigation schemes, although I'm not quite sure what the definition of that is. However, we've seen, for instance, what Hawke's Bay is going through right at the moment. We're in May, and yet they're experiencing extreme drought conditions, and that's going to have flow-on effects for the community and for the sector in that area for the next 12 to 18 months, if not more, as well as what it'll do for things like aquifer recharge and that sort of thing. So really, as these sort of drought events become more frequent under climate change, as they are forecast and predicted to, we need to start taking some action on these water issues now, rather than, like you say, talking about it before it gets worse.
Talking about the aquifer recharge, it's particularly in the north and Northland. Hugh Stringelman, a reporter for Farmers Weekly, was explaining that it's that dire that even a metre of rain wouldn't even touch the sides. And so when are we going to be able to get our head around protecting our aquifers and sort of capturing the sky, so to speak?
I hope it's sooner rather than later, because like I say, we're going to have more frequent drought events, but they'll potentially be punctuated by intense periods of rainfall. And so we need to be able to adapt our infrastructure and our planning systems to be a lot more flexible, to allow us to ensure that we have water available for not just farms, but for domestic supplies, for industry, for the environment, for cultural and recreation purposes, because aquifer recharge is really important for improving groundwater levels and quality, but it's also really important for providing surface water flows as well, because they are connected. So whether that storage is in the form of created reservoirs and dams, or whether it's through targeted managed aquifer recharge, so we can actually use the aquifers as a form of storage.
How are you progressing with the Water Commission concept?
That was certainly an idea that, as I understand it, has been floated for some time. We're not sure where all the policies are going yet in relation to the essential freshwater package. So there were recommendations being made to the government by the expert advisory panels, and a freshwater commission maybe have been a part of that. But we're not suggesting that it has to be a freshwater commission, but we do want there to be an overarching water strategy for New Zealand that guides decision making nationally, but also regionally and at the district level as well. What we certainly don't want to see is regions and territorial authorities having to compete essentially for funding from central government. We need to have a planned strategy that we're working towards as a country.
How much hope are you pinning on Thursday's budget?
It's really hard to tell, because we're in a completely different environment than what we thought we were going to be in 6 months ago. But having said that, like I say, with the trouble that the communities in Hawke's Bay are going through at the moment, and the need to invest in our primary sector and infrastructure projects to promote our economic and long-term resilience, the time is perfect to be having a serious discussion about putting some money into water and doing it in a planned way.
And if it's not now, it certainly will be going very loud into this year's election, I imagine. Yes. You wouldn't believe it, Liz, but there's a lot of people here that are very excited about seeing the back of their children. I know that you certainly wouldn't be one of those mothers.
No, absolutely not. Although I think my son might be happy to see the back of me and his dad. I'm not sure, and get back to his mates.
Oh, it's wonderful. What are you looking forward to under level 2, apart from that fact?
Apart from that, I'm really looking forward to having a little bluey pizza at Scott's here in Oamaru, and getting back on the squash court. Can't wait.
Oh, it's fantastic to be able to get back into those sports, and of course having live sport rather than replay on TV. It would be wonderful. Thank you so much. That's CEO for Irrigation New Zealand, Elizabeth Soal, joining us in our budget lead up into the rural wish list, as we speak every night to our industry leaders and hope and pray of what's in there for rural.
This is Sarah's Country.